If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
Welcome to the Wednesday morning edition of the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso and Nate Sharman here getting you ready for the PGA Championship at Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York. We've been on the course for the last 2 days, and we'll be heading out there shortly to watch the final leg of practice rounds before the second major of the 2023 season officially gets underway. Nate, wow, what a venue and what a week for professional golf.
Yeah, for one word to put in Oak Hill is immaculate, right? It's just unbelievable how well groomed they did. The grounds crew there, just an amazing job getting that course ready for this PGA Championship. So I'd use the word relentless. I'd use immaculate, right? It's just going to be a really good test of golf for these players in this year's second major, and I'm really, really excited to continue watching this event here in Rochester.
It's incredible. And really, in a lot of ways, we've seen two different golf courses, right? We've seen the version that was presenting to players on Monday. And then we saw the version that was presenting to players yesterday with an underrated amount of wind. Right. What stands out to you 2 days in here, walking the golf course in terms of course setup?
Yeah, I think the green complexes really stand out to me the most. I think if you ask a lot of people, they're going to talk about the rough and how luscious that is. We'll get to a little bit more of that, but I just think the green complexes are just stunning. I was here back in 2013 as a 16-year-old when Jason Duffner won. And, I remember seeing, great green complexes and thinking back to that, but these are even more incredible. They brought in Andrew Green, a course architect, a few years ago to help kind of restore what Oak Hill had when it got created, that Donald Ross design. And he just kind of smacked the ball out of the park, right? Some of these green complexes are just incredible. They have a lot of these different holes have false fronts on them where your ball could roll 30 or 40 yards off the front of the green if it ends up in the wrong spot. The bunkering around the greens is just magnificent too. I've joked around with you and a couple other people that if I got stuck in a few of those bunkers, I'd be making a 10 on the hole. So it's just really incredible to me to see where, these bunkering around these greens and just how it looks to the eye and how dangerous it could be, these players, if they get in the wrong spots.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me is, you and I were talking about the rough. And I've got some thoughts on that, on why they may have set that up. We'll talk more about that later.
I don't think it's crazy long, in my opinion.
Right. No, it's just very dense. It's very thick.
Right. Luscious,
and we've seen plenty of golf balls. I was talking to a couple spotters for quite a while yesterday, and the number of golf balls that are just nestling really showcases what they've done with the rough. It's not that long. Actually, when you're walking by it, I think it's kind of like on the shorter side for what these guys are actually accustomed to, especially in events like the PGA Championship or even a US Open. That said, I think you hit the nail on the head here with the green complexes. Like, the surrounds of these greens is just maddening. And elevation. This golf course has some sneaky elevation. And
Oak Hill for a reason, I would say.
Yeah. And when we look at how the course is set up and how it relates to scoring, I think these par threes are going to be absolutely just so important for players to play well and survive, basically, right? You've got number 3 playing at, I believe, around 245 yards or 230 yards. To one of these green complexes that is just astounding in every way. You've got a ton of bunkering, you've got elevation, you've got a drop off in the back, you've got it all. And then number 11 with a little bit of wind introduced. I watched about 3 groups yesterday.
11's crazy.
Just get punished. I mean, it is a very long par 3 with a wide open surround, which just creates, even yesterday morning when I was watching, there wasn't a ton of wind, but there was probably a steady 15-mile-an-hour breeze.
Right.
And these guys were consistently leaving 10, 15, 20, 25 yards short. So that I think is kind of the most, to me, that's the biggest takeaway about how they've set up this course. These par threes have teeth big time.
Right. Oh yeah. We sat on number 11 tee box for a while on Monday afternoon, and there was a good amount of wind coming in, playing 245. I think it was Brandon Wu, during his practice round, he stung 2 3-woods from that tee box, and he was short on both of them. Player before him, I'm struggling to remember his name right now. He hit a 2-iron right on the front of the green, which was pretty cool to watch. The pros hit those low irons like that and just sting them through the wind. So I really like that idea that you put it in the Out of Bounds article last night on the website. Just how important these par 3 scoring is going to be, and you take a look at the final group, on Sunday and who's on that top 20 leaderboard. You take a look at par 3 scoring. I would be really would believe that the winner is going to be the best on the par 3s this week, because that's just going to be so important.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to contend because, you look at even some of the shorter par 3s. We sat at 15 for, how long yesterday? Right. 25, 30 minutes. We watched a few groups go through. And if you're out of position, getting up and down is difficult. That's one of the shortest par 3s on the course.
15 has that big runoff area where you're underneath the green. You're chipping up off a tight lie to a pin that could be a couple paces off the side of the green, and then it goes downhill right away into a bunker. So it's really tricky, and you're really going to take some discipline for these players to kind of hit to the right spot and play a little bit of target golf, especially on these par 3s, to really stay out of your trouble. 3s on these par 3s is a great score in my opinion. Yeah,
and we're definitely going to talk more about scoring here in a few minutes. But when you look at what's going to be most important for players or whoever becomes the eventual winner of this 2023 PGA Championship, what is the biggest factor? What's the most important thing for players to keep in mind if they're going to win?
To me, it's discipline. If you get out of position on your tee ball, whether you be in the rough or you be at a bad angle to a pin, it's just, being able to tell yourself that, I can hit this ball to the middle of the green and a 2-putt, whether it be a par or a bogey, and get out of there and, avoid these bigger numbers, right? Because I think if you try to get heroic, whether you be in the rough or to a really, a tight pin near some bunkering and stuff like that, things can really go south for a player. So I think if maybe you did it in the rough and you get a bad lie, you might have to kind of not play to the green, right? Play short of the green and try to make your 4 or 5. And if you make a bogey, that's okay. It's somewhere where you can get it back, or even a lot of players are going to be playing for that, the par. So they make a bogey on a couple of different holes where you're out of position, say your angle or in the rough, is going to be really important. So I think being able to kind of tell yourself that and know that you don't have to go out here and birdie 9 holes. You don't have to do that. You can make 5 or 6 birdies and make a couple bogeys, and that's a really solid round at the Oak Hill East course. So I think just being disciplined about your approach to Oak Hill is going to be really important. And I think whoever can kind of weather the storm, so to speak, can really have a good chance to take away this tournament.
Yeah, I think after watching yesterday, it's take what the golf course gives you.
That's very important.
Because, one of the things that was kind of, it was a bit of a surprise to me watching professionals go through this thing, where I think a lot of the average golfers also go through, where, you hit a shot and you're kind of surprised about what happened, where it went, or maybe the wind was a little bit like yesterday. Wind was it. So right. There were a few times I watched these guys hit tee shots, use number 11 as an example, and then come up way short, throw another ball down and hit the same club and the same result again. Right. And even a couple of players gave kind of like they looked at their caddy, or they looked at they were playing with, and they would mouth something like, wow, or, whatever the case may be. And it was one of those things. We've all felt that, right? Like you hit a shot and you're certain that, you've figured everything out, and you flush it and it's just not what you expected. And I think listening to the golf course and taking what the golf course gives you, and really not letting the ego run away with these guys. Whoever wins is going to be the one who keeps that in check and takes what the golf course gives them this weekend.
I like that idea. We've seen some press conferences the last couple of days. We got a couple more on tap today. I think Scheffler is getting ready for his this afternoon, as well as Dustin Johnson. Let's talk a little bit about Monday, Tuesday press conferences. We had Rahm, Rahm, Scheffler, Rory went. So Scheffler's tomorrow. I'm sorry, but it's really interesting to hear these guys talk about this golf tournament. What's kind of stand out for you so far when these big guys are talking to the media?
You know what? I think the big thing for me is and you've honed in really well on the players. I've been watching a little bit more on kind of the organizational side. PGA of America CEO Seth Waugh obviously had his press conference yesterday. I don't know what the future of the PGA Championship is at Oak Hill, and
There's been a lot of talk, that's for sure.
Yeah, I frankly am not sure that it is going to continue being in the rotation. I feel more confident about that now than I did even just a couple days ago. And, I think Waugh's comments were pretty telling in terms of not really giving anything away, but also not ruling anything out. So, they said, we haven't even hit a shot yet. Let's give it a week. We'll come back after the event and we'll talk to the course. We'll see what the course wants to do. That was one of the things that he said that I thought was really telling and really interesting. The why, I think in a lot of ways this weekend is a PGA of America sanctioned tryout for the US Open. Meaning Oak Hill is, and we see it with course setup, right? Like this course is set up kind of like a hybrid between a US Open and a PGA Championship, especially what the PGA Championship has started to become over the last few years, a more difficult test of golf. Not quite a US Open, but close. Given the fact that for the last 30 or so years, the PGA Championship has just been a bunch of US Open has-been golf courses. The PGA of America clearly wants to take this event a different direction, and I think that's awesome. But I think that is essentially given Oak Hill the green light to strut its stuff and show that it could host a US Open. This golf course could host a US Open again, and it has. And I don't think the length is so much an issue, especially if we're entering an era where a golf ball is going to be introduced that shortens these players.
Right. It's playing at 7,400 yards this week at a par 70. That's no joke.
Yeah. And look, like I think another really interesting thing here is we've talked about how challenging and demanding and punitive, frankly, this rough is going to be, and how demanding it's going to be for players to keep the ball straight off the tee. There's room. Like there's still meat left on this bone. I wrote that in the article last night. The course could be made more challenging. Like this is definitely not as hard as it gets. So, I think this is a serious tryout for Oak Hill to be considered a US Open venue at some point in the next 10 to 15 years. I really do.
Right. Yeah. I think the fairways are really what's going to make a guy that doesn't hit it that far really important, because if they're, you have a guy like maybe Joel Damon or Kevin Kisner, just to name a couple, if they're going to be able to keep it straight off the tee, these fairways are firm. We haven't gotten a ton of rain in the last 7 to 10 days here in upstate New York. So these fairways are firm and they're fast. So if you can get the ball kind of on the fairway and matriculating down, it's really going to get some roll and run off that fairway too. So I think Damon put it best, in his interview with Dylan Dethier yesterday, just kind of talking about how anybody can win here. We talk about how some of these bombers, have an advantage at some places, but maybe here at Oak Hill a little bit less. I still think bombers do have an advantage. Everywhere they're going to play, they're going to have an advantage. But I think some of these shorter guys, get that benefit because they're going to be able to keep the ball in the fairway and get some roll off of that. So I really do think Joel Damon's right with anybody can win here. But going back to your point, Josh, they really can do a lot in terms of if they want to have a US Open, narrowing the fairways a little bit, maybe even making the green surrounds even a little more tougher and having a little bit of challenge. But it definitely is. I like that idea, how it's kind of a tryout to see, especially with the PGA Championship being in May, you never know what the weather's going to be like. So kind of having that US Open possibility in July, you're guaranteed some good weather, because it really is pretty nice up here in that, July Father's Day time. So that would be really a better option for them in terms of weather, but we'll see what's in store for the PGA.
Yeah. And I think that's another really great point that I did touch on in that article is Oak Hill essentially achieved what it achieved this week, which is a perfect golf course or near perfect golf course.
Right. I would say too.
On a short calendar. And if we are talking about a tournament that's held another month later in the PGA Tour season, then I think it's really primed for it. You sat through several player press conferences. What stood out to you from some of the guys who are going to be playing this week?
What stood out to me is just, you had a couple different guys sort of dismiss Liv questions. Liv's been really having a good season, in my opinion. You get Dustin Johnson winning last week in a playoff. Whether the CW cut it out on some TVs is another story. But, just they asked Rory, if you had a crystal ball and just asked him to expand on Liv, and he dismissed that question pretty quickly. He said, I don't have a crystal ball, first of all, and, just kind of gave a one-word answer as to no when asked about the Live Tour, and just kind of had the unwillingness to kind of answer those questions. We've seen Rory, throughout the last 12 to 16 months on the PGA Tour be very welcoming to Live questions, but just to see him, really have that forward mindset of, I have a golf tournament to win this week, and just kind of not having to talk about Live was interesting to me. John Rahm, they asked him a little bit about Liv as well, and he kind of took it a different direction. He was just kind of excited to see some of these guys, like Dustin and Brooks Koepka, some of his friends. He hasn't really seen much. He might have seen them a little bit at the Masters, but, just being able to play a practice round with them and kind of converse with them as well, too. Rahm always has a way of spinning things in a positive light, right? So, yeah. It was interesting to see how, we might be entering a territory where Liv finds ground on the tour, or on the professional golf scope, excuse me. That's something we could talk about at a later time, but it's just really noteworthy to me, in my opinion, that guys don't have a ton to say about Liv right now, whether that be because they got a major championship to win this week, or Liv is kind of pathwaying a different path for themselves, is something that we can look forward to here in the future. Look at.
Yeah. And I also think there's an element of especially after the Masters, with Liv guys really, frankly, showing up. Too, Phil, yeah. Brooks, Patrick, Reed all played really well. I think it kind of dismissed the notion that these guys were going to immediately fall off. I think the next quote unquote debate is involving Liv is how long some of these guys who are playing well, but maybe not winning majors, and also not finishing high enough or playing enough other events to continue qualifying. Is there some sort of caveat where these guys are going to get special invites back, even though they don't qualify through the traditional means? And what does that do? But for now, I think Liv has carved its place out in professional golf. And, it's nice to see the guys just moving on from it and not really entertaining a lot of these now silly questions about Liv or what its place is or anything else like that. Let that sort itself out. Are we going to see Jordan Spieth this week? It seems to be the biggest question. We've also got some prominent withdrawals over the last few days. Former winner here at Oak Hill, Jason Dufner, not playing. What stands out to you about this Jordan Spieth situation? It seems like he's trying to make it work. He's here.
Right, he's
on the schedule. He is slated to play Thursday morning with Shane Lowry and Victor Hovland. So what do you see here?
It was really interesting to me because he comes out with that statement, a week ago or 10 days ago, where he says, he's really has an injured wrist and he needs to take some rest to kind of get this figured out. Jordan Spieth's won the PGA, or looking to play in the PGA Championship, of course, always shows up for the majors and plays very well. So I think it's going to be interesting too, because Jordan Spieth came out yesterday. He got to Rochester, I think, late Monday night. So he came out for his practice round on Tuesday. He went off the back nine, played number 10, and then he walked in. So we played one golf hole yesterday where we weren't told why he came in, whether it was to do to that wrist or maybe it was even part of his plan too. We don't really know that. It's going to be really interesting to see though, because, the rough, we talk so much about it, you get into the rough and it's really more bothersome for the wrist, right? You have so much more resistance there when swinging a golf club. I hope Jordan Spieth is able to play, this entire tournament. It's just going to be really interesting going off early in the morning on Thursday, like you said, with Lowry and Hovland, to see if Jordan can get going, because he certainly is a fan favorite out there And we really love to have him too. So hopefully Jordan can get going and get right. But really is kind of concerning for him to pack it in after one hole yesterday during the practice round.
Yeah, and I guess if I were going to try and put positive spin on it, would be maybe he's trying to preserve that wrist if there is some kind of injury.
It might have been the plan too. We don't know that. So
yeah, I mean, we saw him on the range. He was hitting some balls on the range yesterday. So I mean, there's some ability to hit the golf ball. We also don't know the details of that wrist injury. So we don't know what is going to be most difficult for him as he heads out. Playing in 35 to 40 degree weather will surely not be a benefit for that wrist. We're probably going to be looking at a frost delay tomorrow morning. We'll see where that goes. But let's get into some of our expectations here for the actual tournament. Winning score. What do you think the winning score is for this? Before we get into picks, what do you think that winning number might be?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about the winning score and what I think will happen. You have a lot of people around Oak Hill thinking this could be an over par championship. I don't think that'll happen. I don't think it's playing that difficult. Definitely it's playing difficult, but you don't really see over par a lot. You see it at some U.S. Opens, right? Of course, but even last year at Southern Hills, that was playing pretty difficult. Justin Thomas finishes at 6 under par to win that golf tournament. So I would really kind of feel it's going to be in that same range. You've heard Justin Thomas talk that it feels a lot like Southern Hills. So I really like that, 4 to 7 under par range. There's going to be really some times where players are going to be tested, but I think if they're able to play with a game plan, right, and have good angles into these greens and, play the right spots on the greens and take their medicine, like we said, be disciplined, I think they can really get under par in this golf tournament. So I'm looking at about 4 to 7 under. Josh, what do you think? I know you're kind of in a similar range. Do you have a thought too?
Yeah. So just in the last 30 minutes, I guess I've kind of flip-flopped on this. I was originally thinking it might trend a little bit lower than where you were, but I think it'll probably settle somewhere in the middle. So I'm going at -6. I think about 6 under par is going to be where the winner winds up. I think the bigger debate question here is this: over under a half dozen guys under par.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's not one I've thought about. Probably under par. There's going to be a good amount of guys at even, I would think. But I would probably take under on a dozen guys being under par.
Yeah, I'm there. I think under a half dozen is going to be the
half dozen. Yeah. No, I think you'll get I think you'll get somewhere in that 6 rate range of guys under par, 6 to 10.
I just don't see it.
I think that's what I like. If you're going half dozen, excuse me, I heard your question wrong. Then I would take the over there. About a half dozen. So
over for Nate, under for Josh on a half dozen guys being under par when the dust settles on Sunday. I just don't. I think there are going to be too many guys that come Sunday afternoon are trying to do a little too much to get the win. And I think that's going to drive scoring up. And I think you're going to see guys fall off. Could be a scenario too, where, if somebody gets, a 2-shot lead Sunday afternoon,
right.
It's going to really change how guys in that top 10 have to play coming down the stretch.
A little more aggressive, right? Yeah.
That could either be great or it could be terrible for their score. So we'll see what happens there. Let's talk favorites. Nate, who is your favorite to win this weekend?
Oh, you can't pick against Jon Rahm, the Spaniard here in the second major. He's won the first major this year. He's playing some incredible golf. He's got 4 wins on the season. I really kind of debated this one too a little bit in my mind, but then I just kind of sat down and thought, how can you pick against Jon Rahm, right? For the reasons I just said. So I'm going with the Spaniard to take his second major of the season and work towards that Grand Slam.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Patrick Cantlay because he's just been hanging around so much. And I think it's only a matter of time. And I think a golf course like this, he takes a little bit of heat for being a slow player. But I think at the end of the day, the careful, more thoughtful, measured approach is definitely going to benefit him this weekend. And this guy that's been racking up top 5s and top 10s, I think he's going to get the first one right here.
And he hasn't been super good in majors in his career, as looking throughout his career and how good he's been in other events too. But now getting Joe LaCava on the bag, his first major with him, we know how successful he's been, especially with a guy like Tiger Woods. I don't know if you've heard of him, but getting LaCava on the bag and getting that experience right can only help Patrick Cantlay. So that's a great pick, Josh. I like that.
Absolutely. Let's talk dark horse to win. We don't normally do this, but since we've been walking the course, we've been seeing different guys actually go through their process. Who is your dark horse pick to win this weekend?
My dark horse pick isn't exactly like a guy way down the list. I don't think the guy way down is going to win this tournament. I'm looking at Tommy Fleetwood in that 55-1 range. Tommy's been playing well. Just came off a good round last week, so I think just watching him kind of go through his progressions. I was able to watch him for a couple holes yesterday. I think Fleetwood and those luscious locks can possibly get it done and hopefully springboard his PGA Tour career, because he's played so well overseas and he's played well over in here in America. Just can't really break through and start that and jumpstart that career here on stateside. So I'm looking for Tommy to get in the winner's circle this weekend.
Yeah, and you know what, for reasons that we've discussed at length here on the pod today, I'm going with Jimmy Walker. Walked a few holes yesterday watching him play. He was playing alone, and not a soul was following him, and that boy was dialed in. He was hitting some golf shots, and I know majors are different. Don't worry, he's got that experience, and he's a seasoned guy. And at the end of the day, this is the major. If there's going to be a major where somebody comes out of the woodwork and wins, it's one like this. And we've seen Jimmy play well in recent weeks. He looked really good down in Hilton Head, of course. So we'll see what happens there. But he is I don't want to call him a long shot pick. He's a very, very long shot in terms of the betting odds. But guy that I'm kind of watching who's going to fly under the radar start of the week. If he has a good Thursday and Friday and he's hanging around top 25 heading into the weekend, he could do something, especially if that winning number stays low.
And there's the difference I saw with Walker between what you just said is we saw him on the back nine playing with Scotty Scheffler, right? Yep. And there was definitely a few people watching him then, gotten out there with Scheffler there in the afternoon. We were watching him on 15, right? And he knocked it on the green to about 30 feet and then snaked it in. So made a birdie there. So hopefully Jimmy's not getting his birdies out of the way early here and he can get in the winner's circle for you, because that would be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I also just want to say, followed him for three holes on the front nine, and watching him on 7 come in, he hits a nice fairway finder off the tee. His caddy throws a few balls down for him, and he just throws 3 darts at the flag. Bang, bang, bang. All basically within, I don't want to call it kick-in range, but serious makeable range.
Right.
And just, if that's where he is, I didn't see a lot of that yesterday out on the course, oddly enough. So, take that for what it's worth. You've got a betting value pick. You seem a little salty about where JT sits.
Yeah, I was looking at the odds yesterday, and they have JT at 30-1. And so I had nothing but to take that. The defending PGA champion at 30-1 is just a little bit disrespectful in my mind. You take a look around the odds, and like Rory McIlroy is like 15 or 16-1. Rory, just with the way of form he's in, I don't really know if he's going to play that well. You got a guy like Cameron Smith who's like 35-1, who's played well, relatively well on the LIV Tour, but played okay at the Masters. You have a guy like Dustin Johnson. I think he's around 30-1 too. So just looking at, you take a guy like Justin Thomas, who's a PGA Championship winner twice in his career, and he hasn't played that well this season, but he can turn around on a dime. Taking a look at that 30-1 number, it just felt a little, like I said, disrespectful to me, to Justin Thomas. So I had no choice but to take it. And we'll see what happens with the former Alabama Crimson Tide player this week here. And I'll have a couple more pets for you guys, some fun props, maybe some make them miss the cut, kind of lines that I had at the Masters. Hopefully turns out being a little better for me. Give us a follow on our social channels. I'll release those today. Haven't had a chance to kind of cook those up yet. So this afternoon, I'll be doing that for sure. So take a look at our Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok accounts there. I should have them up this afternoon.
Awesome. And yeah, to that end, don't forget, we are giving away a Callaway Hyperlight Zero golf bag at the end of this golf tournament. So follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or subscribe on the website or YouTube to be entered. We'll draw the winner at the conclusion of this spectacular championship weekend. But that is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. We'll be back tomorrow and Friday, giving you our first and second round thoughts on TikTok and YouTube. And if you see us out there at Oak Hill Country Club, say hello. Remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. See you next time on Out of Bounds.